Mezcal is having a real renaissance, both here in Mexico and north of the border. Now, if you had any awareness of it before, it probably included some of the cheap stuff with the worm in the bottle and maybe some memories that you'd rather forget. But today we're learning that it is a beautiful, handcrafted beverage that's made in a time-honored fashion from a variety of agaves. And when you taste it, either solo or in a beautiful cocktail, you notice that it has a rich, smoky complexity that you'd expect in a good scotch, and the brightness that you expect in a great tequila. Plus the fact that since it's an artisan product, it always unveils a lot of really good stories. The tale of any mezcal begins out in the fields, right where the agave is planted and harvested. Now, tequila is produced using only the blue agave, but mezcal can be made from a variety of agaves, including the very popular espadin. Once that plant is matured, it takes about 10 years. It's stripped of its long leaves, leaving that pineapple-shaped core. In fact, from this point on, it's called a piña. And those piñas of espadin are huge. They can weigh up to 200 pounds. They're collected by the hundreds and taken to the distillery, where they're roasted in fire pits before being made into mezcal. The craft of producing mezcal goes back hundreds of years, and at distilleries like Fidencio in Oaxaca, they're still making mezcal using the age-old methods. Co-owner Enrique Jimenez's family's been making mezcal like this for 120 years, and he offered to step me through his traditions for small batch mezcal. The heart of mezcal, that pleasurable, smoky quality that distinguishes it from tequila, comes from the first step in the process, the pit roasting over an oak fire. At Fidencio, for each batch, hundreds of espadin piñas are cut up and cooked in a red-hot pit in the ground. And after several days of roasting in that covered pit, the piñas come out cooked through, caramely looking and carrying that distinctive smoky aroma. At this point, they taste juicy, surprisingly sweet, kind of like a roasted sweet potato.
Es muy dulce. Muy dulce.
These pieces of roasted piña are transferred to a large stone grinder called a tahona, where they're crushed to a pulp. In this classic artisanal method of mezcal making, a horse pulls the stone wheel made of rose quartz around in a circle. Well, that's really rustic. The pulp is moved into pine barrels where the fermentation starts. Once the mixture heats up as part of the natural process, water is added and fermentation goes into high gear. The liquid even bubbles up and makes a similar sound to a pot of simmering water. After a few days of fermenting, the top becomes waxy and it separates from the sides of the barrel. That's when the mixture's ready for distillation. Both the liquid and the agave fibers are poured into the copper still that's heated by a wood fire. The copper top and tube get secured in place, and the long, slow distillation begins. At Fidencio, they distill their Clásico twice to produce a smooth mezcal that's luxuriously full of character.
No, it's fantastic. Fantastic.
It might sound strange, but the worms that live in the agave plants, well, they're larvae actually, have long been an interesting flavor partner to mezcal, most traditionally as an accompaniment to mezcal in the form of sal de gusano, a special salt that's infused with the flavor of those worms. Now, I got a chance to see how Georgina, Enrique's wife, makes her version. The flavoring starts with two kinds of chiles, guajillo and arbol, toasted on the comal. Then the gusanitos are toasted, but it doesn't take very many of them to give a really distinctive flavor. Georgina put some salt into a Oaxacan ceramic chirmolera and then ground the chilies into it. Then she added the gusanitos and ground those in. Boy, right away the strong, smoky aroma of the worms filled the room.
Sí. Es rico.
It was time to finally taste that beautiful Fidencio mezcal with Arik, one of Enrique's partners. Arik had two varieties of mezcal that he wanted me to taste, their Clásico and their Pechuga. Okay, a taste of the Clásico, but we have accompaniments to go with it here.
Absolutely.
See, I think it's really interesting that the tradition has developed here for oranges and not limes like it has in the tequila area. And of course, we've got the great sal de gusano that we just made there. Salud.
Salud.
It didn't make much of a clink, but... So let's just talk flavors. How do you describe the flavors? How do you take it apart for
How do
people?
I take it apart? That's a good question. For me, it starts off with a little bit of a fruity nose, because Espadín, this variety, is a very sweet and very giving variety of agave. It's it has a lot of fruit notes to it, but when you roast it over the embers of oak, it gives off this sort of the yang side of it, which is like a very earthy, savory side. And then it finishes with a touch of salinity in there. So it's really like a whole journey through the palate when you're drinking it.
That is a perfect description of it, because it does start off with fruity notes. It does go to the smoky barbecue qualities. It does have that incredible complexity that just washes over your tongue. And then I had never thought about the salinity at the end, but I think that's a really beautiful way to describe it. So we have another bottle in front of us that is Pechuga, which most visitors to Oaxaca just never quite understand. Why is it called Pechuga breast?
It's called Pechuga because we make it with chicken breast.
And then you tell people that, and then they look at you like you have three heads.
Absolutely.
Because they can't imagine how a chicken breast can come into this whole project.
Exactly. What we do is we take a batch of our Clásico, and then we put it back into the still. And in that we macerate, we let fruit. And what we use is quince, pineapple, apple, banana, and guava. So we take a chicken breast, it's the whole breast on the bone, and then it's hung from the cap of the still, suspended in there. We run the still, and it goes in vapor form again, and it exchanges love and gestures with the chicken breast. It cooks all the way through. And then we capture it and we bottle it undiluted, and then we share it and we enjoy it.
Well, I can say right away that you get the fruit in the nose.
Proper Pechuga is unlike any other spirit in the world. It has this really noticeable body and unctuousness and oiliness to
Yes,
it.
it does.
And a richness that's really beautiful, and kind of it is what it shouldn't be in the spirits world, because it's distilled one more time, but yet it's richer and more full-bodied.
It is. It's not less flavor. It's more flavor because of the fruit and because of the chicken breast that's in there. You can taste all of the artisanal quality that you guys are packing in every sip of this mezcal. It's super cool.
Thank you.
Salud again. Mezcal goes brilliantly with full-flavored snacks. One of my favorites here in Oaxaca, and one of the local favorites, is called the Piedraso. It might surprise you because it's kind of an unexpected mix of ingredients. Buenas tardes. ¿Me puede preparar un Piedraso, por favor? Gracias. Okay, you start with this piece of very crispy bread, and then you douse it with all this spicy vinegar, pour hot sauce, and sprinkle chili, and it's got pickled potatoes and carrots and some cheese on here. I have to say, I love the impact it has. Not exactly for the faint of heart. If you're as much a fan of Oaxacan mezcal as I am, its smokiness, its rustic qualities, then you might want to think about a snack that has some of those same qualities. I'm going to show you how to make some smoky, spicy cashews, and we're actually going to use the grill to cook them with. So I'm going to start off with 3 cups of cashews. These are the unroasted cashews. Now for flavorings, we're gonna mix together some olive oil, a couple of tablespoons, a little honey, this will add beautiful sweetness, a teaspoon of salt, And then I'm gonna add some smoky chipotle chili. Now this is the dried, powdered chipotle. And then the final flavorings are gonna be allspice and black pepper. So much more flavor will go into your dish than if you use spices that are pre-ground. Now mix all of that together. And I'm going to scrape it in on top of the cashews. All this gets mixed together to coat those nuts nicely. And now let me show you how you can toast these on the grill. Okay, so now I've set up the grill for indirect cooking, which means that in the center part of this grill, I have a kind of medium hot fire. Now the setup that I'm going to use for toasting the nuts is either a heavy duty rimmed baking sheet, or you could use one of these perforated grill pans, which I like to use a lot on the grill. And then you either need to put a piece of parchment paper in there, or what's actually the best thing to use is a silicone baking mat. This was one made especially for the grill. I've got a few twigs that I collected from the yard, and I'm going to lay those in here over the charcoal so that they'll give some smoke to this, adding a whole lot more flavor. And then all of the coated nuts now we'll just go right out onto the baking mat. Spread those out to a single layer. This is important. Now you'll want to go in and stir them around every few minutes just to make sure that they're toasting really evenly. And then after, well, anywhere from say 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how hot your fire is, they should be beautifully toasty looking. Once they've cooled off, you're in for a beautiful, smoky, spicy treat. Salud. I love to serve shrimp when I'm having people over for a casual get-together. It's just so special. And the other thing about shrimp is that it's so welcoming to different flavors, sweet, tangy, spicy. I'm putting them all together into one dish, and it's going to feature a chili that maybe you haven't worked with before called a chile pasilla. It's a long, dark chili with a wrinkled skin, and it's got a bold flavor that I always think is sort of rustic but delicious. So I'm going to show you how we're going to prepare it. First, pull the stems off like you would with any chili, and then cut it into rings. We're not going to puree this chili. Slice up half of a small red onion. Turn the heat on underneath a large skillet. Fill it with olive oil. And when this gets warm, I'm going to add those chilies to toast them. Stir them around for probably about a minute. They'll change colors and release their aroma. Grab the onions, put those into the skillet. Toss it around a little bit. Add to it 1/4 of a cup of balsamic vinegar, a flavor that goes really well with pasilla chilies. A little sprinkling of salt, about a tablespoon of sugar, and then I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup of water. I'm going to let this simmer for about a minute, and then we'll get on to the shrimp. These all need to be peeled and deveined, so I'll show you how I do that. Just grab the underside of the shrimp and peel it off like that. And then slice down the back of the shrimp, just like that. And you'll find a little vein in there. And then start with another. Add the peeled and deveined shrimp to the skillet, and then stir until the shrimp have turned to a beautiful pink color. The shrimp will cook kind of slowly with all these delicious flavors. And slide the shrimp into a serving dish. I think this is really delicious with some cilantro over the top of it. Not necessarily chopped cilantro as much as just the leaves sort of let fall down over the whole thing. The great thing about this dish is that you could serve it cold, or at room temperature, or warm. It's delicious however you serve it. Most of us are comfortable making tequila cocktails. We're used to the flavors that go really well with it. Mezcal makes a really great cocktail too. You just have to pair it with different kinds of flavors, usually bolder flavors, because the difference between tequila and mezcal is one of strength and earthiness. So mezcal is smoky and earthy, and I think it goes really good with certain kinds of bitter flavors. And that's why I'm going to make a cocktail using Aperol. Now, Aperol, if you haven't used it before, is a little bit like Campari. It's one of those Italian bitter spirits, but it's sort of like Campari Light because it's got some sweetness to balance the bitterness. So I'm going to make a cocktail that starts with 1.5 ounces of Oaxacan Mescal. 1 ounce of Aperol. It's not very high in alcohol. 3/4 ounce of fresh squeezed lime juice, 1/2 ounce of simple syrup, 5 drops of bitters. I really love the Peychaud bitters from New Orleans. I'm going to stir that around just to blend all of those ingredients. Add, and this may surprise you, a little bit of beer. This is going to add not only an effervescence that is going to be delicious, but also sort of reinforcing that slight hoppy bitterness. Fill the glass with ice cubes, lime peel for the garnish. Just use a vegetable peeler. What I like to do is just twist it and just set it there on top of the drink. You've got a delicious cocktail, a little unusual, but very contemporary. Certain places in Mexico, they like a guacamole that's a little different than what most of us are used to. Instead of red tomatoes seasoning it, they make it with tomatillo. And absolutely the easiest approach to creating that kind of guacamole is to buy a jar of roasted tomatillo salsa at the grocery store. I've got one right here. And I'm going to spoon some of it into these beautiful ripe avocados. I like to season it with a little chopped fresh cilantro. Give it a nice sprinkling of salt. And then I'm going to use my favorite tool for making guacamole, an old-fashioned potato masher, and mash everything together. It's perfect just the way it is. One of my favorite restaurants in Mexico City always serves guacamole like this with chicharrón. So I thought, why not gild the lily? Why not put some chicharrón directly on it so that you get some with every bite? Kind of roughly chopped it up. And I'm going to sprinkle it all over the center of this guacamole. And I just love Mexican hot sauce, so I thought it'd be delicious to drizzle it over this guacamole with roasted tomatillos. And truthfully, there's nothing much better than this aged Mexican cheese from the town of Cotija. And I'm just gonna grate it over the top of our guacamole. Now that's guacamole. I invited some friends over for a mezcal tasting and to enjoy those snacks that I prepared. We started with a classic bright mezcal from the Espadín agave.
It does smell like tequila. I can smell the smoky notes.
Let's taste it and see what we think of it. You get that rainwater, you get that smokiness, you get that agave green.
There's green quality.
There's a green quality about
Yeah.
it. It's amazing when it's really well crafted like this one, made in small batches. They can get an incredible smoothness to it. I love the stuff. This is a different kind of agave yet. This is called Madre Quiche. So let's just taste it and see where it goes and what other flavors we pick up in it. So it's a little bit of citrus in there.
It's got a little spice.
There's spiciness to
Yeah.
it. And when you think about the way they eat and drink in Oaxaca, you understand how they developed mezcal because it really does have those same kind of characteristics to it. And you understand how traditions evolve.
When would someone who lives in Oaxaca drink mezcal? Is this for a holiday or an everyday drink?
There's an expression in Oaxaca that basically says, for everything good, mezcal, and for everything bad, too. Whenever you want to drink mezcal, it's the right moment to drink mezcal. So this is the wild harvested tobala, which is considered to be the premier agave used in Oaxacan mezcal making. It's a very alluring nose, as they would say, because there is so much complexity. You just keep wanting to smell it and smell it and smell it, but of course that's not exactly what we're here to do, so we should try to taste this. I mean, we could make a whole afternoon just smelling the stuff, but I think we should taste it. Wow.
Oh my.
That is the wild harvested tobala. Once you taste this, you know that you've tasted the very best of what Oaxacan mezcal can offer. In Oaxaca right now, a lot of the more contemporary restaurants are taking these beautiful mezcals and turning them into interesting cocktails. But I've got one ready for you, okay? And I think you're gonna like it because it sort of balances things out. And then I've got a couple of treats for you too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right.
Let's see what we call it.
Okay,
Ooh, those are
I'm
pretty.
passing these pretty things out. Oh, cheers! It's so great to have you guys here.
Oh wow. That's really yummy.
It's good, isn't
It's
it?
really yummy.
It's dangerously good.
There's some plates over there, some plates and forks.
Tim, you're on plate duty.